Hey, this is Steve Moreland here with Success Publishing, and today on our show we're going to interview Samantha Jung-Fielding from New Zealand, and we've got an incredible story here. Sam, you have credentials that, as I was kind of going over, preparing for this interview, and I'm like, my gosh, you have so much training and knowledge here. And instead of me jumping into it, first of all, I want to say welcome to the show and thank you for working out your schedule. I know we've been working on trying to get this interview together for a while. You've been busy, we've been busy, and had so many things going on. And you have now become a published author right here in the last month or so. I think you just even got your books in recently. Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. Tell us about where you're from, and then we'll get into the publishing, and we'll talk about the message and all of your knowledge and insights and where you're going and how you help people. So I'll let you go. Tell me where you're from, and tell me about who you are.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for welcoming me. It's always a challenge with time zones, so I'm delighted that we get to do this together today. So as you said, my name is Samantha JungFielding, but pretty much everybody calls me Sam. It's a lot easier, just 3 letters. And I originally come from the north of England, a town called Harrogate in North Yorkshire. We moved, my family, my husband and I came to New Zealand with our children 8 years ago. So we now live in the south of Auckland, and we have an alpaca farm, and in later life we've become farmers, which was the first time ever, and it's been wonderful. I've got 4 children, 2 of whom are still at home, so I get the delights of living close to nature with some of the children and running my business in this beautiful environment too.
Absolutely. Now, I remember when we were first meeting months ago, and when you're telling me about the alpaca, and I was sitting there thinking, if I had remembered this, I would have really sold hard on doing the interview out with the alpacas, because they're such awesome. You've sent me some pictures of them. They're really great.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I did think to myself this morning, maybe I should go outside into the paddocks with the alpacas. But it's winter here in New Zealand.
Right.
It was just 8 degrees this morning when I went out to walk my dogs. So I wouldn't be looking quite so uncovered. I'd be muffled up because I don't really do the cold.
Yeah, I forget, the difference in the northern southern hemisphere, because when I was there in Auckland, it was about 20 years ago. And but we went there in January, so we were experiencing summer. And I remember we went all the way down to the South Island, and we were in Queenstown, and what's the other place that's like a ski town? Is that Queenstown?
Queenstown is a ski town. There's also Christchurch down on the South Island. There's some very, very beautiful areas, and I hope that you saw them all, because you've probably seen more than we have.
Well, I just remember being there and walking around this beautiful, it reminded me of Vale, Colorado here in the US. And there was no one there. And so we walked around the boardwalk, and there was this beautiful crater lake, but the whole country of New Zealand is just absolutely gorgeous. But anyway, when you said that, I was like, oh, right. The difference in the hemispheres, and we're really privileged as, a publisher to get a chance to meet fantastic authors like you from literally all over the planet. And so, you've got such an interesting history, and you got to get in and tell me a little bit about, what got you into the whole sphere of behavioral change. You're a practitioner in neurolinguistic programming. I know what that means. A lot of our viewers might not. So give me a little framework there and help me understand what got you so interested in helping people change from where they were stuck and move to where they want to be.
Perfect. It's funny. I think the case for most people in the career that they choose is that they do something that they need themselves. And pretty much everybody in the therapeutic world has gone into that field because they had their own requirements. So I actually grew up in a scenario that meant I didn't want to have my future the same as my past. And I changed already what I saw as being the life that my family had led, and I'd gone into the corporate world, but I'd chosen a career where it was pretty easy to burn out rather quickly. And after I'd burned out, I was looking to do something much more relaxing, much more in tune with my own body. And I opened a natural healing center, which was a dramatic change because I'd spent 15 years in the corporate world of sales and marketing.
Sure.
So in the healing center, it was wonderful because that's where I began with physical therapies. So I trained in massage, reflexology, aromatherapy. I started to touch on the spiritual things with some Reiki. But
Sure.
over time, I really became fascinated by what goes on with the mind and the emotions.
Sure.
And so I trained first in hypnotherapy and then in neuro-linguistic programming. And then I extended with a whole load of spiritual practitioner work as well.
Okay.
When my daughter was born 11 years ago, I could no longer lean over clients. So I had to stop physical work and I focused on everything that I'd already undertaken in the field of what goes on with your feelings, what goes on with your thinking. And I brought them together to actually aim the work I was doing around behavioral change. I really believe it's critical for people to understand that just because life was once this way doesn't mean it always has to be the same for the future. And I love the fact that we can flourish moving forwards when we understand how to make those changes in our thinking, in our feeling, and together they lead to our behavior. And so that's really how it came about. And I've specialized in that for the last 16 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
That's a lot of experience. And I have, you're touching on a lot of different areas, and I have a little background in some of those, but you have such a great specialty in some very interesting verticals. So, I do want to talk about your book, but if you'll give me just a second here, I'm just so interested in what you said here. Help me understand from your perspective and from your experience, your practice, when someone wants to make a change, usually they have a conflict with their identity. Their identity frames what they allow themselves to do. And anytime they step outside of it, even when it's an attempt to be something better, it ends up dragging them back because their identity, whether they adopted that most of the time from peers, parents, some type of individual that was their perceived superior, and for them to have the personal identity that feels in check with themselves, how do you help someone break that framework that says you have this other version that you want to go to and you're not happy where you're at right now, both feeling wise and conscious wise here? How do you reformat the identity that lets them let go of that limiting identity and lets them move forward into this better version?
I'd love to tell you that it's a magic pill. I named my business Happinessence because I would have so many people who would come to me and say, there's nothing really wrong with me, but I just don't feel happy. Okay. And it occurred to me at that point, there's an essence for everybody, an essence of happiness. Right. And wouldn't it be marvelous if I could just bottle it and make a million? Right. But of course, that's not the way. You're absolutely right. And change occurs at several different levels within anyone. You can simply change your behavior. Mm-hmm. You can change your thinking patterns. And as you so rightly identified, lasting change comes when you make a change at the identity level. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was huge because I'd grown up identifying myself as the daughter of an alcoholic. And that is already going to level you off at where you're going to be able to make your achievements.
Sure.
So in order to change at any of these levels, there are different techniques that we use. And I draw my work from areas of psychology. I draw my work, some parts of what I do from counseling, mentoring, psychotherapy, but I also draw a lot on simple habit. Habit is one of the best ways to change any identity. Okay. So when I moved on from where my situation began, I began to make tiny incremental changes.
Right.
And if I look now, if I look back at where I was 25 years ago,
Mhm.
it's unrecognizable because
Sure.
I've taken each area of my life and I've made those tiny incremental changes, building brand new habits over and over again. We call it peeling back the onion.
Ah.
Now, a very wise friend of mine,
Mhm.
that'll be your lovely self, was actually speaking this morning about the necessity to test yourself. And
Mhm.
I watched the video that you had recorded,
Mhm.
and I thought this is absolutely key. One of the reasons that we make a change is to move. But if we never actually measure where we are and where we're attempting to reach, we
Sure.
cannot see progress. And so
Right.
it's about tiny incremental changes over time and measuring and tracking so that you
Yes.
can see just how far you're progressing. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And the measuring is designed ultimately to give ourselves, the kid inside of us has to feel reward. And
Totally.
if you have this idea that, oh, I want to be this other version, and you may, what a lot of people don't do is they don't frame what does it mean to go from me today to me better version, and when do I want to get there? It's like a journey. I want to get there in 1 year from now, 5 years from now. And I use a lot on social media. I use fitness because I think fitness is a holistic idea, but people can see physical fitness because they can see, okay, here's Steve out riding his bike, or here's Steve out doing pull-ups or something like that. Okay. And when you measure those, then you are tracking, the incremental movements, and you don't walk out one day and go, oh, I'm going to do 85 pull-ups. No, you don't. No, most people go, I can't do one. And you go, but that's where we start, right? And you actually start with a negative, a reverse version. And that insight that I know, because I got so curious, I was a guy, and pull ups is a guy thing. You want to be able to show your alpha male kind of thing. And I've always been a bigger guy, so I couldn't do pull-ups. I'm like, oh, well, that's where those smaller frame guys that wear 150 kind of lightweight, welterweight fighters. And I could see them doing them all day long. And I said, oh, it must be a thing. No, it was a training limitation. When I finally had someone show me the breakthrough, then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to try that. And then all of a sudden I had the breakthrough where I made my first pull-up. And I must have been, well, I'm 52 now. I mean, my first pull-up must have been 20 years ago. Okay, so I couldn't do a pull-up until, let's say, I was 30 something. But then all of a sudden, once I learned the routine, then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I got one. There was the success. You talked about the incremental patterns, compounding effect, just like the compounding growth of money. Our lives can have those same compounding effects. So this is what you get to do every day. Wow. You get to help people break through. How cool.
This is going to make you smile because I'm 53
Mhm.
and I decided last year at 52 and a half that I also needed more physical fitness in my world. And I totally believe that the magic happens when you step out of your comfort zone.
Always.
So I said to my son, my teenage son, I might just come down the gym with you. He said, no, you're not. That's going to ruin my street cred.
Sure,
And so
sure.
I looked at what else I could do and I began pole dancing.
Okay.
Now, people think that pole dancing is just about getting out there and strutting your stuff, but
Right.
it's actually an awesome way to gain core strength.
Sure.
And for me, that has always been something that has been a focal point.
Yeah.
I've always wanted a greater core strength. I don't want lots of muscles. I don't want to be able to necessarily bar lift or whatever it may be. My eldest son, he drop lifts. I don't want to be able to do that.
Right.
But just like you, I wanted to be able to lift my own weight and have it look elegant,
Yeah.
have it look smooth, have it look lithe, and for me to actually feel that strength. And I've now been working for more than 6 months at pole dancing,
Uh,
and I can do some of those things you're talking about, which
right.
is just amazing, isn't it?
It
I'm
is.
not yet good, but I'm on the pathway.
And that's the thing is it's Japanese have that term called Kaizen, which is
Agreed.
just small, like you said, incremental improvements, and they're measured because otherwise you won't know if you're improving if you're not measuring. But you then, how do you, as a behavioral expert, how do you translate that into helping someone that says, okay, I want to lose weight, or I want to look better, I want to feel better physically, but that those are almost symptoms
Mm.
of something inside of them that they're wanting to feel better here and down in here. So how do you translate those with all of your expertise to help them take little baby steps there, but ultimately make it impact deep inside that their life becomes better?
Interestingly, it's all done through conversational work. I think
Okay.
I was born to talk.
Okay.
And I always joke that my name, Samantha, comes from the Hebrew and it means the listener. But often I will end up talking more than I'm listening when it's a therapeutic conversation. So I first find out where my clients are at and where they want to be. Then I ask them their expectation of the path, and together we begin to work on that. I'm very big on setting minor goalposts so that we can celebrate as we go. But to be honest, the biggest part of the work that I do is motivation. It's not me giving them motivation, it's finding their motivation,
Sure.
because they're the one that has to actually get out of bed, repeat, repeat,
Right.
repeat, and repeat.
Right.
So a lot of my focus is helping them to simply remain consistent,
Mm.
because we don't get anywhere unless we repeat. And it's about carrying on doing,
Sure.
and that's what brings the incremental change. And I describe my work as being the gap between knowing and doing.
Yes.
That's where most people fall down on the implementation side.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I remember being in a Tony Robbins seminar when I was doing the firewalk
Yes.
30 years ago. Yeah, I can say that, right? Because we're the same age. 30 years ago, I was doing that. And it was incredible because there was like 1,500 people there at this event, and we were all, anyway. And I remember, the concept that he was giving here is how many people know that they're supposed to do certain things. You're supposed to eat less bad stuff. Carbs are bad, breads are bad, pastas, they all taste wonderful, but too much of a good thing, well, you end up with, a larger midsection than you want, right? And if you don't follow discipline, but those things are physical, you can tell those things, by the way your clothes are fitting, or by your just walking around, go up a flight of stairs, and if you're huffing and puffing. But when someone is telling you, I'm not happy, and those are so subjective terms, there's not a measurement that you can open up your mind and slide out a little piece and say, okay, well, how much happiness are you right now, and how much do you want to be? So how do you help them measure those subjective things that they want in their life that everyone's looking for? How do you do that?
Would you believe there's actually a psychology all around happiness?
Oh,
And
okay.
there are tiny techniques that we can utilize in a repetitive momentum that help people to identify their happiness. And so that's what I do. I first point out to them that actually we're often a lot happier than we believe, we just don't notice it. And so we do something like maybe a gratitude exercise where we are noticing at a specific time every single day, maybe 2, 3, 5 things that we are grateful for. My eldest son, his mum unfortunately passed away when he was 12 years old, just before his 13th birthday. And in our family, we have an exercise called the Gratefuls exercise that we do at the dinner table, where everybody around the dinner table gets to say 5 things that they're grateful for today. And this began because my son could see nothing, no reason for any happiness at all after the loss of his mum. Totally understandable.
Yeah.
But at nearly 13 years of age, I could not allow him to spend the rest of his life seeing nothing and no reason for happiness.
Sure.
And so this work began with helping him.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had one of my other children who ended up with an OCD problem.
Hmm.
And so we had to work with him to be able to manage what was going on in his mind
Sure.
so that he could be happier on a daily basis. When the incident first hit him, his arm, his entire hand, everything just became disabled, incapacitated. His mind was so powerful that he could no longer move his arm.
Wow. Okay.
I know. So this is the challenge we have, that
Sure.
our feelings and our thinking can
Thank you.
actually change literally the way we are able to act. And so that is how I begin, is I start talking to people about where they are right now, about any elements of happiness they're experiencing at all. And we build from those small beginnings. And
Yes.
so it's actually the same as a fitness regime,
Sure.
but we're doing it from an emotional perspective.
Right.
Now, I have also got a program where I will clear past emotional rubbish to give a very stable foundation upon which to build new happiness.
Wow.
Because the problem is that we can get stuck in a loop. And so we're consistently looping round and around in our thinking, in our feeling, and therefore in our behaving.
Sure.
And so to break the loop, I do have a mechanism that I utilize that helps people to just place a new foundation and begin once more.
Wow.
It really depends on the individual as to where they're at, where they're aiming to achieve, and how that path looks to them, not to me, but to
Sure.
them.
Yeah.
Then I help to give them a new perspective on the path, and we start on those small incremental changes.
I agree with you totally, because those negative reinforcement feedback loops, which are part of our identity,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you get excited. Okay, I'm going to start working with Sam, and in 6 months or a year from now, I'm going to be here. And then as you start trying to make that as little climbs up, even a slight grade, you realize you're carrying so much. I love the word rubbish. Yeah, you're carrying, these. Uh, Not just backpacks, but you're dragging,
Mm.
all of this excess.
It's
All
almost like a ball and chain
yeah,
around your ankle, pulling you back each time you take a step forwards. So you're absolutely right. And that's honestly, when we talk about the book, that for me is why I wrote the book, because this comes from my own personal experience of having to drag those balls and those chains.
yes. So when you speak, you're not just a clinical therapist. You are there. There's like a great advertisement. I'm trying to remember. I'm not just the owner of the company, but I'm also, one of the clients. I remember seeing that on a commercial once upon a time. And so you're saying that what you have is real life experience, not just clinical therapy and expertise that you've learned from someone else, but you've actually applied it, you've lived it, you've changed your life. And
That's
I
right.
always think that that's so much more powerful, because when you're speaking to someone, you know from inside here what they're going through because you did it. You're not just taking it from what I call book knowledge, which some
Yes.
people have to use and have to help people apply it. But when you have broken free from your change, your ball and chain, then yeah, it seems like the information, it comes in a different frequency.
You're
It's
absolutely right. You
yeah,
totally are. And that to me is the key thing, that I actually developed happiness because I was seeking my own happiness.
perfect.
And so to me, it was all about happiness. And what's happened now is that the business has actually morphed slightly, because if you listen to Tony Robbins, and I do love Tony Robbins,
Sure.
he talks about the science of success and the art of emotional fulfillment, and they actually work together. You
Sure.
can't have one without the other. And so over time, the business has become that. It's actually become about people wanting higher performance, whether it be in their working world, in their relationship, in the way that they feel about themselves and
Sure.
how they actually are coming out into the world. So I feel very, very lucky that on my own personal path, I've found all these things for myself and then developed them into a business to help other people.
Wow. I Wonderful. I mean, like you said, I can tell, I can see the smile because it's just something that you absolutely love. And I think it's Guy Kawasaki that talks about what I call a smile that comes from inside, and that's what you have right now. It's just
Thank
something that you can
you.
tell you just absolutely love what you do, and it's extremely fulfilling to help someone get a breakthrough, and then you see that expression on their face, and they almost, it's a little bit like I don't want to call it like a child that gets to a new place and they're like, oh, I broke through, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, am I supposed to be in this room? And they want to back out, and you're like, no, 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 it's okay, you just
Yes.
did what you learned.
I get to be the cheerleader for
Right.
all these people who are making awesome change that is going to literally transform the world. What an honor that is. Can you see why I'm so passionate?
No, absolutely. I love it. So I have to, I love having this conversation, and I know you and I could sit here and talk for the next couple hours until Zoom turns us off or something. But I want to showcase your book that you have now put this inside of, that you are using. It just came out, and you've had international press release and everything. You've been on Fox, ABC, NBC. You have a copy of your book there. I just saw you opening the box opening the other day. There you go. Okay. Wow. Absolutely incredible. So tell me a little bit about this, and, how the book came about, why you decided to write it. Tell me that.
Well, do you know what is so exciting is that the book literally only arrived on Friday of last week. So here we are on Monday,
Right.
and the launch actually happened over a month ago, the day before my 53rd birthday. And on my 53rd birthday, I woke up to find that I was a #1 bestseller on Amazon, which was amazing. But
Oh,
I did the entire thing using a photograph of the book. I
right.
didn't actually have a physical copy at
Right.
all. It was all virtual. So
Sure.
when I actually was able to open my box of books on Friday morning, it was a whole extra level of
Yeah.
authorship because I physically have a book now. Even the children were asking me to sign copies for them, which is so exciting. So, how it all came about was just that whole inner decision of wanting to reach more people in an easy fashion.
Sure.
The challenge is that the work that I do, there's obviously a recompense. There's going to need to be a payment. And not everybody who needs the work that I can do finds it within their budgetary constraints to be able to work with me on a one-to-one basis.
Sure.
So having a book
Right.
means I can reach more people at once and more of the people that need the work that I do. That
Wow.
was how it came about.
Perfect. So it's an extension of you being able to capsulize some of the information. I mean, what you do on an individual basis is so personalized and specific. But what you're saying is you were able to say, okay, what we talked about at the beginning of this, a magic pill. Okay, no such thing, right?
No such thing.
No such thing. But you can start that very first steps in the right direction that kind of tilt and nudge their life. And that's what you're able to use the book, is to extend your insights and put it in print so that other people can easily access it.
And what I love so much is that the book is an anthology. It's not just success principles that I use. There are other best-selling authors in the book too. So that together, there's a whole lot of different principles, different perspectives, brand new ideas. Somebody picking up the book for the first time who's not in their best place in their world has got a whole lot of opportunities in one place that could help them to make their initial shift. To me, that couldn't be better. That is the very best way to bring your first book to market.
Sure, absolutely. So, oh, wow. I'm just sitting here going, where do you go? You got all this energy, training, background, and a deep heart for helping other people, and not just other people. I use that in a plural sense because you want to make the world a better place. So where do you go when you have already achieved so much and you have crafted this this self that you have created yourself as a coach, as a personal guide? I think is a little more intimate, which is really, I think where you're at. Coach is a little bit objective, and you really have to get personal with people to understand what's going on in here and here.
Yes.
Where do you go from here? Like you said, you just had your 53rd birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
And where does your journey leading you now?
It's a really interesting question because for us, I got the books, the physical copies, on my daughter's 11th birthday.
Okay.
Last year, on her 10th birthday, we had just submitted our application and we went for our ceremony to become New Zealand citizens.
Okay.
So it feels like our physical journey has really brought us to the right place at the right time. New Zealand, we have been very, very fortunate with the pandemic that actually for us, life is back to normal. And this is not the case in many places around the world. We're already able to go back to work. There are many people who have been adversely affected, but things are actually moving forwards in New Zealand faster than they're able to in some other countries.
Sure.
So for me now, I think the pandemic gave me an opportunity to take what I do and bring it online. I do a lot of speaking. I'm a distinguished Toastmaster, which is an award, the top award in Toastmasters for public speaking. And I gained that in February this year on my son's birthday. So it's almost like all these things have come together at very special times for my family, for me to say, well, my next move forward has to be to reach a wider audience. And the original plan was to be a stage speaker, to be the female Tony Robbins of New Zealand.
Sure.
But the query now is whether on-stage speaking may be giving way to online speaking. And so I'm actually working with a beautiful friend of mine, and we're looking at creating a YouTube channel and actually widening what I do to a larger, more international audience. I already work internationally, but as my lovely friend said to me, Sam, you just need a bigger audience.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Going global has to be the thing.
Wow.
And so I've gone from one half of the world to the other hemisphere. I live 12,000 miles away from where I was born.
Right.
So now it's extending that virtual reach so that clients from all over the world can be in contact, and not necessarily working on a one-to-one, but developing programs where I can bring people together in groups, online, etc. So that's the next stage, with, of course, a couple more books to follow.
Well, sure. I think that is what you're seeing here is you adjusting, improvising, and adapting to a new world with a situation that, beginning 2020, none of us could imagine that we'd be looking at having to make such major judgments in our future thinking. But I agree with you. I think this is now kind of been a springboard for you, because if you're in a physical audience, you are limited to a geographic physical location, right? And now you have no limitations. I mean, all you got to do now is get Elon to book you on his ship to Mars, and you're taking care of people out of space too. And all that's possible in the digital world.
How did you know?
Right, for sure. Well, this is awesome. You have, you have the ability to make and affect so many people's lives. And, what I think is unique is, we've used Tony Robbins a couple of times here because he is I guess you would say he's a cornerstone individual that has really made the whole world of behavioral change different. But there are some people that Tony does not work for, for them.
Right.
And what is unique about you is you have a particular style, you have a signature, you have a frequency, and the syntax of what you deliver and how you deliver it is able to reach an audience that someone like Tony would not reach.
Well, let's face it, I'm a girl.
Right. And that is a big difference. There is so many things now, either whether it's gender or the other nationalities. There's so many things out there that people have as prejudices or preferences or whatever that says, oh, I don't want to listen to that person. And sometimes it's just the way that you frame your conversation, right?
Yeah, very true. I mean, Tony, I love him, but he's a huge giant of a man. I am much smaller. I'm 5'4".
Right.
I speak, as you say, with a different accent and hopefully bring a brand new perspective to similar work that Tony is doing, but also I think there's a brand new angle coming out through what I'm doing as well. And that I think is where we're going to be able to make the difference. I really love what Tony has done, and my goal is to enhance it and take it further. We all have that opportunity to actually, I believe, be better than the giants on whose shoulders we stand.
Absolutely.
To really pay back or pay forwards, whichever way you want to look at it, but the gift that we're given of their learning that we can then enhance and move forwards.
Well said. Perfect. Um, I just sit there. I thank you first of all for the time and the insightfulness, and your articulation is extraordinary. You do deserve your status in Toastmasters. You're an incredible speaker. You're insightful, and what I love about someone that really knows what they know is you don't see them constantly staring at their notes because you don't need them. It comes from you because you have the knowledge here, but you've internalized it, so it feels like it just flows because it is who you are.
Steve, that's so kind, thank you. But I have to say that no one stands alone. No man is an island. And I couldn't have done this without the Success Publishing team. You guys were absolutely critical to my success because I'd never brought a book to market before. And you guys guided me as I guide others in the work that I do. But you helped me, you were there to support me, and you did the cheerleading for me. And so as a team, I cannot edify you enough because I honestly believe you were a huge part of me getting to this today. And then together, we get to move it forwards even further. So how much fun is that?
It's awesome. That's what is really great about this is when you get to connect in this digital world and you find what would you call there's a term for them in the spiritual world. They're soulmates. They're like
Soul
similar.
family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you get the chance to meet them, and you're like, I know I've hung out with you on a longer basis because you just connect. You know how that you have that feeling that you don't have that feeling that this person's a stranger and I don't know them. It's just that you have a comfort level, and that's what's so beautiful about what we get to do here at Success Publishing is we find amazing individuals like yourself that have this incredible heart and vision to make the world a better place, and we get to help you with our expertise and move you to the next level, springboard you, skyrocket you, however that ends up serving you best. But it's been an incredible experience hanging out with you. And this is what's beautiful about this. We get a chance just to continue to work with you and hang out with you. And down the road, we hope to come back and do some other interviews and see how progress has gone and how things are moving forward and just continue to work together.
That would be an honor. Thank you so much.
Enjoyed having the time with you, and thank you again. And you have so many really incredible things that have happened for you in this year. And so I wish you many, many more good things that are coming. So
Thank you, Steve. Always a pleasure. Let's speak again soon.
for sure.